Well, I was born completely colorblind, so I've never seen color, never seen blue, yellow, pink. I don't know what color looks visually. So as a child, I tried to ignore the existence of color, but it was impossible because color kept popping up. So I kept hearing the color names every single day of my life, like things like Red Cross, Orange, Greenpeace, Bluetooth, Yellow Pages, many elements, Red Bull, Green Card, Pink Panther, James Brown, it's in his last name. Also this huge country called Greenland. So I was constantly hearing names of colors, so I couldn't really ignore it. Also when you use it as a code, like cold water, hot water, or in maps, this is fine, but if I go to Tokyo, I can get easily lost because some maps only use color codes. Also when I was learning the flags of countries, I had this situation where 3 countries share exactly the same flag. And when people talk to me, if someone asks me, have you seen a man with ginger hair, blue eyes, and dressed in pink, I would only know that the man has hair, that he has eyes, and that he's not naked. So the reason why I wanted to sense color was not because of the beauty of it or because I wanted to change my sight. It was because there was this social element that I couldn't have. I didn't want to change my sight because black and white vision has many, many advantages. I see better at night. I have better night vision. Also, I see longer distances. I memorize shapes more easily. And also, photocopies are cheaper in black and white. So there were many, many advantages. So I didn't want to change my sight. I wanted to have a new sense for color without changing any of my existing senses. When I was studying music, I realized that there's been many theories in history relating color and sound. Newton created a theory centuries ago relating each note of the musical scale to the color of the rainbow. Then I looked into it further and I realized that it's very logical because color and sound are both frequencies. Color is a light frequency and sound is an audible frequency. So the aim was to create a third eye, or in this case, it ended up being an antenna that would allow me to hear the frequencies of light. So if we could hear the frequency of the color red, what note would we hear? Well, we would hear a note between F and F sharp. So each color relates to a different frequency of sound, and then that's the scale we created in 2003. And then I didn't want to use my eyes or my ears. I wanted to have a new organ, so I thought it would be first of all, like an antenna, small antenna at the top of my head, and then the aim would be to create the body part. So first I memorized the name, the sound of the basic 6 colors. When I memorized these colors, then I added more colors, and I kept upgrading my sense of color until I was able to sense 360 microtones for each degree of the color wheel. I hear color as sine waves, so it's a vibration in my head that then becomes a sound. And that's the most similar sound. So it's very pure, electronic, and very microtonal. So at the beginning, I had huge headaches, because wherever I looked, I would hear. So I had to get used to this new input, and in the end, it became normal, and it became a sense, and I started having favorite colors. I also then added different levels of volume, depending on the saturation. So if it's a color that is a bit gray, it's a bit softer. If it's very vivid, it's louder. And then when I was able to sense all the visual spectrum, I didn't see why I should stop there, because there are many, many more colors that exist that the human species cannot sense, like infrared and ultraviolet. So in 2008, I added infrared and ultraviolet perception. Since then, I can sense more colors than the human eyes, and this allows me, for example, to detect if it's a good day or a bad day to sunbathe. So if I hear high levels of ultraviolet, I avoid the sun, or I put sun cream, or I just don't sunbathe, because it's a color that can damage your skin, or it can even kill you. Also, infrared allows me to know if there's movement detectors in a room. So if I go to a shop, I can tell if the alarms are on or off, or in a bank, and in many cases they're off, so it's interesting to know. Also, the aim is to continuously extend my perception to beyond the infrared and beyond the ultraviolet. So I keep upgrading my perception of the visual spectrum, of the spectrum. Then that's the sense, but then I wanted to have a new organ. First I thought of having a third eye implanted here in the middle of my head, but this would limit my perception of color to only what I have in front. So I wanted an organ that would be 360 degrees. So this allows me to sense the colors behind me without having to turn around. So I wanted an antenna, and I looked at nature, and I looked at different systems that would work. And in the end, I found the perfect type of antenna. I created it, and then I went to the doctor, and I said that I wanted an antenna implanted. And he said, sorry, we don't do this here. You'll have to convince a bioethical committee. So I went to the bioethical committee, and I said I wanted an antenna implant, and they said no for 3 main reasons. One, because it's not a pre-existing body part, and that's one of the ethical things that they push. It's not a pre-existing sense, perceiving color through vibrations that go beyond, or ultraviolet and infrared perception is not a pre-existing sense. And also they were very worried about the image the hospital would have if someone came out with an antenna sticking out of the head. So they said no, but then I tried to find a doctor willing to do it anonymously, and I found one, so we did the surgery. This is my head facing down. We reduced some hair, some skin, and then the head was drilled 4 times for 4 different implants. 2 is the antenna implant, 1 is the chip that vibrates, and we also decided to add a 4th implant, which is internet connection, so that I can receive colors from other parts of the world or connect to satellites, so that then I can sense the colors from space. So then we closed the head, and then the antenna and the skeleton took 2 months to merge. So now it's part of my skeleton. If someone pulls the antenna, it's impossible to remove. It's like pulling a bone inside the skull of the head. So now I have 5 people in the world that have the right to send colors to my head, 1 in each continent. For me, it's like having an eye in each continent. So if there's a beautiful sunset in Australia, my friend from Melbourne can use his mobile phone to stream live images of the sunset directly to my head. So I could be here, but sensing a sunset. Or if at night I'm asleep and someone from London starts sending me violet colors, then I'll start dreaming of violet things. It has happened before that if someone sends specific colors while I'm asleep, my friend can actually influence my dreams, and they can color my dreams. So it's a way of sharing a sense with my friends and even sharing dreams, and it's the use of the internet as a sense. I think that's something we'll start seeing in the next few years, how we can start using the internet as a sensory extension or as a sense itself. My brain has changed. This is an MRI of my brain. So it creates a new sense, this chip. It allows me to feel colors through vibrations, and the brain, both the visual and auditive cortex are always active. So when doctors look at my brain, they can't really tell if I'm looking at something or hearing something, because both cortexes are always active. I had an issue in 2004 with the UK government. I have a passport, and a UK passport, and they didn't allow me to renew it because they said there was something electronic on the picture. And I replied saying that this is not an electronic device, that this is an organ, a sensory organ, and that this is a part of my body, and that I felt cyborg, that I felt that I was a union between cybernetics and an organism, and that they should allow it in my passport photo. They replied again saying no, and that became a small battle with the UK government, and in the end they allowed me to appear, because they got fed up, I guess, and then they allowed me to appear in 2004 with this one, and then we upgraded the picture with a new antenna. Now I'm also in conversations with the Swedish government. The material inside my head is Swedish, so I'm Swedish. That's why I'm applying for Swedish citizenship as well. And it might also be practical for me because it's the European Union, so now I might be able to be on both sides. So now the Swedish government only allows you to apply for Swedish citizenship if you are in any of these 5 points. I think there should be a 6th point. If you have a body part that is Swedish, you should always also be allowed to apply, at least apply for Swedish citizenship, especially if you've had a Swedish body part for over a decade. I think you should also be allowed to apply for it. If this, in the end, they say yes, it might open up the possibility that if you have a heart transplant and your heart is Chinese and you've had a Chinese heart for 10 years, you should also be allowed to apply for Chinese citizenship, at least be allowed to apply, and then they can decide whether you can or not be Chinese. This is one of the little things that has changed in my life is the way I dress. Before I would dress in a way that it would look good, but now I dress in a way that it sounds good. Hearing color allows me to dress in specific chords. So for example, this is dressing in C major. It's 3 colors that sound like a major chord. This is a minor chord, so I would dress like this in a funeral because it's a sad chord. Or you can also dress in specific melodies. Depending on the design of the clothes, you can wear a song. This is, for example, electronic music that I transpose to color and then into a tie. So when I scan the tie, I can hear electronic music. So the longer the tie, the longer the melody. Also, you can wear a wedding dress. So this is a wedding march. So you don't need to pay for musicians for your wedding. You can be the wedding march. And also, the house has changed now. I've painted my house in a way that it sounds good. So the living room is C major. When you go inside, I hear C major. Also, the floor of the house is all red, because red is the lowest frequency, so it gives a profound sound to the whole house. The exit door is green, because green is in the middle of the spectrum. Also, the ceilings are black and white, because when I lie down, I don't want any sound, so it's silent, black and white. And the exit door is green because it's in the middle of the spectrum, so it tunes yourself before you go outside. It's like a tuning fork. My bedroom has 3 colors. It has turquoise on the left, which is the note B, pink, which is E, and violet, which is D. So I have B, E, D, bed. So I have the bed spelled in the bedroom. And then the kitchen is violet. It's the highest frequency pitch. So it's a kind of color that keeps you alert in the kitchen. So it doesn't interfere with other sounds. Also, it's a color that we don't usually eat. So it doesn't interfere with the food. Food has changed a lot because I can also compose music with food. Now I can eat songs depending on how I put the food on the plate. And I'm collaborating with Celia Can Roca. We've just finished creating the plate player or the chromophone, which allows the people in the restaurant to actually hear the food. So you can ask for some Mozart as main dish, or you can have some Lady Gaga dessert, and it's served on a plate that rotates with a sensor underneath, and then you hear the food. So you can literally eat songs. So now wherever I look, I hear sound. So I can compose music by looking at things instead of playing an instrument. I can just have different colors in front of me, amplify the sounds from my head, and create music by looking at different objects. And walking around a supermarket, for example, has changed a lot because it's like going to a nightclub now. Supermarkets have so many colors that it's very, very stimulating, especially the aisles with cleaning products. That's where there's the most unusual combination of colors, also because they're very saturated, they're very, very loud. So I really enjoy just walking around supermarkets when I go to different cities and comparing different chains of supermarkets because they all create different types of melodies. Milk is silent, so white elements are completely silent. And it's not only these type of products or food and vegetables, it's also art. I can now go to a museum and listen to a Picasso. I can listen to an Andy Warhol because painters have become composers. I can literally hear the scream. It creates a very microtonal chord. And you can easily distinguish painters by just listening to the paintings. Also, the way I sense people has changed because when I look at someone, I can hear their face. So I like doing sound portraits, where instead of drawing someone's face, I get close to someone's face, and then I write down the sound of the eyes, the lips, the skin, and the hair, and then I send them an MP3 of their face so that they can listen to themselves. The first time I did was Prince Charles. I asked him if I could listen to his face, and this was his reaction when I asked him. For example, each person sounds different. Judi Dench has silent hair, like a glass of milk. James Cameron has very high-pitched sound of the skin. It's a type of... Vince Cerf has a different sound in his eyes, like also Al Gore. They have different notes in each eyes, different frequencies, because it's different types of turquoise. Tim Berners-Lee has a very unusual sound of eyelids. Marina Abramovic is completely silent, but her lips are very loud and very low. Steve Reich has a melody in his eyes because he has like a pattern. Steve Wozniak has green sound, like it sounds like green apples, actually, his eyes, a type of green. Moby has one note less because he has no hair, so he sounds a bit less than other people. Robert De Niro, very, very high-pitched lips. So each person has its own. Woody Allen, very soft. Macaulay Culkin sounds like a major chord, C major, which is unusual to find a major chord, whereas Philip Glass has no major chord, he's very microtonal, and Bono has very loud glasses. What really shocked me with people is that people who say they're black, they're not actually black, and people who say they're white, they're not actually white. People who say they're black, they're very, very dark orange, and people who say they're white, they're very, very light orange. So we're not black and white, we are all of different shades of orange. This is a color wheel. There's reddish orange and yellowish orange, and then different shades of light, but it's never, ever white or black. You can also create melodies with faces. So I do face concerts where people cue, and then I start creating rhythms with the eyes, the lips, the hair of the audience, and then the music is created by the faces of the audience. And then if the concert sounds really bad, it's their fault, because that's where the music is coming from. The last face concert was of Prince Albert II. He liked it so much that he's using his face as his ringtone now. So if someone calls him, he hears his face. The secondary effect of hearing color is that when I hear music, I can also paint it on a canvas. So I can paint what I hear. This is Mozart's Queen of the Night transposed into color, note by note, from the center to the end. And this is Baby Baby by Justin Bieber transposed into color. So it has a very different result. Also, the way we speak creates different frequencies which relate to different colors. This is a speech by Martin Luther King, and this is a speech by Hitler. They look very different because Hitler didn't have a dominant note, whereas Martin Luther King spoke between C and E, so you have dominant colors. Also, you can create color concerts where the musicians learn to play the colors, so they don't use a score. They sing or they play the colors that are projected on them. And also public sculptures where you can walk underneath and hear the colors of the sculpture by downloading a mobile app, and then you can simply walk underneath and listen to a melody, or at night the projection keeps changing colors, and through the mobile phone you can hear the colors and hear a specific song. The reaction of people has changed. Since 2004, I've been walking around the street with an antenna, so it has prompted lots of conversations with strangers, basically. I've been speaking to strangers every single day. It's changed what people think. In 2004, people thought it was a reading light. They thought I was interested in reading. In 2005, 6, they thought it was a microphone for internet chat rooms. In 2007, 8, they thought it was a hands-free telephone, like taxi drivers started to go with like hands-free phones. In 2008 or 2009, people thought it was a GoPro camera and that I was filming my life. In 2011, 12, people started thinking it was something to do with Google Glass. And now lately, children are asking me if it's some kind of extendable selfie stick. So it's changing what people think. Hopefully, in the 2020s, people will just think it's an antenna, a new sensory organ that allows me to sense some kind of information through a new organ. In 2010, I created the Cyborg Foundation with Moon Rivas with the aim to create new senses and new body parts and extend the perception of our species by adding technology in our body. We also promote cyborgism as an art movement and a social movement, and we also defend cyborg rights, the right to have surgery, the rights with the passport situations, and simply the right to have the same rights as other people. Some of the projects we've done is like very simple. This one is an internal radar, a pair of earrings that vibrate whenever there's presence in front of you. So you can sense movement without using your eyes. And depending on the interval, you can perceive the exact speed of any movement in front of you. Also, when you turn around the earrings, you can sense if there's presence behind you. So you have retroception. If there's a wall, you'll feel it. If you walk in the street, you'll feel if there's someone behind you. Also, we've developed the seismic sense. It's now an implant that allows you to feel the activity of the planet. Whenever there's an earthquake in the world, Moon Rivas feels an earthquake in her body. So now she's in New York, but if there's an earthquake in China, she feels it in her body. So she's constantly feeling the earthquakes. Every 5 to 7 minutes, she feels an earthquake. At the beginning, it was confusing, but now she feels it's like her second heartbeat. So she's completely connected to the movement of the Earth, and she feels much more related to nature than she ever felt before. She now also has a second implant that allows her to connect to the seismograph on the moon, so she can feel moonquakes. So she's using the internet as a sensory extension to explore space, which is also the thing I'm doing now, using the internet to connect to NASA's International Space Station so that I can feel the colors from space. We both think that now we can start using the internet as a way to explore space. Instead of traveling to space, we can send our senses to space and explore what's out there without having to physically go there. When I connect to NASA's International Space Station, I am here, but my sense of color is fully in space. And this allows me to explore and to feel the colors from space without being there. I can only connect 2 hours a day because it's so overwhelming. The amount of spectrum in space is much wider than here, so it becomes too much for me. So I'm training my brain to have these permanent connections, and hopefully in 2018 or 19, I'll be able to use the internet connection exclusively to explore space and to sense the colors from the cosmos, basically. This year, we launched CYBORGS, which is offering senses for other people. It's pre-made senses that people can acquire. The first sense we are launching is the north sense. It's a small chip that vibrates whenever you face north, so it allows you to feel the magnetic north of the planet. If you have it for several years or several months, this should become subliminal. You will stop feeling the vibration, and it will become a subconscious feeling of north, which then will give you a sense of orientation. This is probably a sense that humans had before, but we've lost. There's many other species that have this sense, like sharks and pigeons. They can feel the magnetic north, but we have actually lost it. We can only know whether north is by looking at the sun or looking at several icons, or more or less guess it, but we can't really feel it. So this is going to give this new sense to a maximum of 2,000 people by September. So we are launching just the first sense in 2,000 north senses. I think that becoming a cyborg is going to bring us closer to nature, not to machines. I think, that in my case at least, becoming a cyborg now makes me feel much closer to insects because I share a body part with them. I also feel closer to animals that sense infrared and ultraviolet. If I look at my cat staring at the wall and I sense that there's infrared on that wall, I know that my cat is not staring at the wall, it's staring at the infrared. Or if I see many bees going to a specific flower and I sense that there's ultraviolet there, a high level of ultraviolet, then I know that they're going there for this reason. So it connects me with other species in the same way that moon feels much more connected to the planet by feeling earthquakes, or people who might feel north will also feel more connected to nature and to our planet. So I strongly believe that becoming cyborgs will allow us to feel closer to nature and to other species. Some of the other developments I've done is a tooth. I had a tooth missing, so I created a tooth with a small light inside so that in case of emergency I can just click and then I have emergency light inside. This is also called bioluminescence. Some animals can create emergency light in total darkness, but I've had an issue with it that when I was eating, the light was going on and off all the time, so I had it removed. We're trying to find a way of turning it on and off without the clicks. And then I'm creating another tooth that will allow me to control my antenna so that I don't need to use my hand to move the antenna. I will be able to control it through my tooth. So it will be controlled through Bluetooth, so it will be a Bluetooth tooth that will allow me to control the antenna without using my hands. The next sense that I'm developing and that I'll start practicing this year is the sense of time. We all have a perception of time. 5 minutes is 5 minutes, but the perception of 5 minutes is unique for each person. We don't have an organ for time, so I'm developing a sensory organ for time. It will be a small crown inside the skin, so between the skin and the bone, that will allow me to feel different heat depending on the time it is. So it will take 24 hours to go around my head, so depending on where I feel the heat, I will know what time it is. The question is whether or not, if I have this for several months, this might become my perception of time. If this happens, then I'll be able to control my perception of time. If I want time to go slower, I'll program it so that the heat goes a bit slower. Or if I want time to go faster, I can program it so that I feel the time is going faster. Also, if you then turn it around 2 or 3 times, I will feel I'm traveling in time. So it's taking Einstein's theory of time relativity into an organ, into a sensory organ, or into a sense, to see if we can actually control our perception of time by having a new sensory organ. That's it. Thank you. I think we are in a very beautiful stage of our history where we can actually redesign who we want to be as a species. We can redesign how we want to perceive reality. And we might be actually witnessing the renaissance of our species. Thank you.